Hey guys, we're at Lafarge Lake in Coquitlam, BC. Beautiful place to paddle around on an inflatable raft or ride your bike. Bikes are allowed on this path, which is kind of nice. It's just like a quiet walking path otherwise. We're looking at the Vale 9D. This is a new one from Electra. I've been excited about it because the branding is a little bit different here. This almost looks like, you know, it's not sloping and kind of cantilevered like a lot of the other Electra frames, and you can see how they spelled it here. It's not the cursive kind of a frilly look like a lot of other models, including the path, right? So I've been comparing these two bikes, trying to figure out the differences between them. They're priced similarly. The Vale is a little bit more affordable at $32.99. The path is $36.99. So for $400 more on that model, you're getting an upgraded motor, sort of upgraded brakes, Shimano versus Tektro. Interestingly, it doesn't have through axles. Like, this has 12mm through axles front and rear and 142mm hub spacing, but again, a little bit of a drop down on the drivetrain. This one has Shimano Alivio 9-speed 11 to 36, whereas the path, it has 10-speed Shimano Dior with like a kind of a clutch mechanism. So very interesting. This one has this really stylish, kind of futuristic looking rack, which would be great for panniers, but doesn't have that platform on top. So if you want to have like a child seat or maybe just a trunk bag, you can't do that. The lights are a bit stepped down on this one, both by Spanninga, single LED in the rear, and it's got this nice Ascendo dual beam in the front, which works well, but it doesn't really have side cutouts. On the path, they've got aluminum alloy, pretty nice, like supernova lights, right? So upgrade, still don't have the side cutouts, which is, it's kind of a missed opportunity. Trek, which owns Electra, is all about safety, which I'm definitely a fan of. And you can see they've got reflective sidewalls on these Schwalbe Supermoto X tires. These are awesome, 27.5 by 2.4, so fairly wide for great stability. They do have puncture protection. It's performance green guard, which is like 3 inches or 3mm, not 3 inches of kind of extra thick rubber, just designed so you're not going to get thorns and glass giving you flat tires, which is again nice because no quick release here. The other one does have quick release. It has standard 9mm quick release skewers, whereas this one has heavy duty through axles. Almost like unnecessarily in my opinion, because this is just a 32 km/h 20-mile-per-hour top speed electric bike. I mean, it's kind of a cruiser setup, a little bit more aggressive though. The other one has a quill stem, whereas this one has 31.8mm, more like mountain bike style, and it appears to be like a tapered head tube, a little bit lower, like mid-rise handlebars instead of high-rise. You can tilt these forward and back. By the way, this only comes in step-thru, but like 6 pretty nice colors. This one's sort of gender neutral, but they have some that definitely skew a little more masculine. I like that they're going for comfort here with the suspension seat post, 7.2mm, just standard diameter. You could replace that if you want to get the really low minimum saddle height. You can see there's a pretty low like standover height on the bike because of the step-thru frame, but the actual minimum saddle height is raised a little bit because of that suspension post, and it's not the best one in the world. Right now it's set up a little bit too firm for me. If you take it out, there's a bolt on the bottom so you can adjust that and loosen it up, loosen up the preload so you can preload that spring. They've got the tires inflated pretty high and the preload high on that right there, probably because this is sort of a shop demo bike, and you get heavier riders on these things and you don't want to have low tire pressure and get like pinch flats or have people bottoming out on that seat post. So I get it, but those are a couple tips for you if you're looking at this bike and you're a lightweight rider like myself. I love that they got bottle cage bosses right here. Love that they've got these black, like Electra branded ergonomic grips, locking. And then I talked about the hydraulic brakes. They aren't Shimano, but Tektro does a pretty good job. They're 3-finger levers with adjustable reach, 180mm up front and 160 in the rear. So that's the trade-off I was talking about. Aside from a different brand, Tektro versus Shimano, which again may be more of a value part here. A little bit smaller rotor in the back, so you don't get the mechanical advantage over the wheels. And both the Path and the Vale, they do have the same exact wheels with the same exact tires. So they're both going to get that really comfortable, stable feel, but the fenders are a lot wider on the Vale. And to me, again, it kind of makes this a slightly more masculine bike. Okay, so coming back to, you know, what makes this bike special? Like paint matched aluminum alloy fenders, paint matched fork, hydroformed, tapered, no suspension, but again, we talked about some of the upright body position. They've got this interesting flat foot design, so you can see the seat tube right here, and then the bottom bracket's actually shifted forward right there, the spindle, that allows you to still get good leg extension while keeping the saddle a little bit lower, so that when you're on the bike, you can put your foot flat on the ground when you're at like a stoplight or a stop sign. That's what they're all about. They've got this patented flat foot technology, which I've seen on some other bikes, but they're really the ones who promoted it early on, but before electric bikes were even a thing. So it's neat to see them carrying that through and really evolving the brand. I mean, it's a stylish bike. It works pretty well, and it's got a proven drive system, which is the Bosch Active Line Plus. Okay, so this motor right here, it does a pretty good job. It measures the same 3 signals as all the Bosch motors. You got your rear wheel speed, pedal cadence, and pedal torque. It measures 1,000 times per second. And I wanted to come back here and look closely, because yeah, I think we've got like a kind of a sensor and a reader now mounted to not really the disc brake rotor, but in between those two. There's like a little bracket here. On a lot of the older bikes and some maybe less sophisticated bikes, you've still got like a magnet and then a sensor that can get kicked off or bumped out of place. So I really like how tightly and cleanly this is integrated, and then it has shift detection. So if you are shifting through those 9 gears, the motor is listening for that and kind of easing off a little bit. And this motor, it puts out up to 50 Newton meters of torque. So it's definitely a step down from the Paths motor, which is the performance line. Okay, it puts up to 65 Newton meters. So you're getting 15 more Newton meters. It's definitely a sportier feel on that motor. They both they feel kind of similar. The 2020 motors, they have these standard size 40 tooth chain rings. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. On a lot of the older performance line motors from Bosch, there was like a conversion gear, so it had to spin 2.5 times for every single crank revolution, and it was a lot louder, maybe less efficient. Those were heavier motors too. This one's like 7.2 pounds. So it's quieter. It's not going to give you as much power as the performance line. Again, $200 more for the Path and slightly different hardware setup. And ultimately, yeah, you know, it's just going to be a little bit more efficient, but you're going to get this kind of clunking feeling, which I'm going to show you later on our ride test, because you pedal along and you're doing pretty well, and then as soon as you stop, especially in the highest levels of assist, it kind of goes clunk, and you feel a little bit of push from the pedals, and I don't love that. It's something that I'm still trying to figure out, because the performance line CX motor, it's a totally different housing and stuff, and it's really a nicer motor. And so to me, these Active Line and even the performance line motor that I think is really the same Bosch hardware just spec'd up, it's a little bit of a trade-off in terms of how it actually feels. This motor also cuts out around 105 pedal strokes per minute, RPM, whereas the performance line on the Electra Path, that's going to go up to 120. And it is noticeable. Like when you're pedaling at a decent speed and then you downshift for a hill and your cadence goes up, the motor might not be able to keep up with you, which means you slow down and then the bike slows down, you have to shift down again, and it just cascades like that. It's a bit of a mixed feel. And check this out, see where the charging port is right here? It's like under this little rubber flap, you know, it's got a leash, and it works well enough, but it's right there by that crank arm, right? So if you're charging and that crank passes by, it could kind of unplug the charger, just get snagged. I really like on the Path how they've positioned it right here on the down tube, like on top of it instead of on the side. So that's a big, well, not really big, but it's a detail that I just wonder why they didn't do that on more of their models. But then you see this step-through tube right here that maybe they didn't have room. And this frame is set up to be fairly stiff. Like, I've been riding it around, I'm not feeling frame flex. It feels very sturdy, very responsive, and almost a little hard because the tire pressure right now is so high. And those through axles are just very stiff. So back here we got this nice adjustable length Pletcher kickstand, stays clear of the crank arm. You're not going to get pedal lock, which is something I occasionally complain about. Nice saddle, fairly active, not as squishy. It doesn't have like the elastomer bumpers and stuff like the saddle on the Path, but again, it doesn't have the suspension seat post. So just make sure you get that adjusted right if you want the actual comfort experience. Both of them have these kind of plastic with grip tape pedals that do a decent job, and they've got this aluminum alloy chain guard, which is going to protect your pant leg. Now the Path actually has a steel like chain cover, which is really nice, but it can get rusty and stuff over time and jingle around a little bit better. That bike weighs a little bit more than this one. I think this one's like 53.7 pounds. That one's like 55.5. So you are adding a little bit of weight, but it comes in a high step and a step through, whereas this only comes in like a step through frame. So, you know, again, very approachable. To me, it's like weird that for the bike that's more expensive, why didn't they do the through axles on that one? Why don't you get the suspension post on that one? But the other big difference is in the display. I'm going to get there in just a second, but I do want to call out the charger. This is a 4-amp charger. They didn't give you the smaller 2-amp, which is nice because, you know, this is just going to charge a lot faster, and it's still a fairly lightweight charger. This weighs like a 1.7 pounds, fairly portable, especially if you had some panniers or something. You could take it with you to extend your range, and you might want to do that, even though this is a very efficient motor, because they're stocking it with the PowerTube 500 battery pack, and thankfully it does have the ABIS key, which you can get key to like some folding locks and stuff, which is really cool. There we go. So I'm inserting the key on the left side of the bike, which is another bit of a complaint for me. Like, the battery comes out on the right side, which is very convenient, and that's where all the sensitive bits are on this bike. But you have to reach around and unlock it like this, and then click. Kind of springs out a little bit, but it stops, and then you push down on this black piece here and then gently lift out, right? So this is a pretty cool design from Trek, something custom. They call it RIB. It's removable integrated battery. It's got this aluminum alloy cover on it that's paint matched, very nice, and then this handle so it's easier to carry around. But I do have some complaints about it. It weighs like 7.1 pounds with the RIB integration, but I think the battery itself is like 6.6 pounds. So you're definitely adding some weight to this thing, especially compared to the older Bosch Power Pack external batteries. So of course this looks nice. It keeps weight low and center on the bike. It's pretty clean in here. The cables are accessible for shops, and that's one of the areas where Trek/Electra really shine. They have all these shops you can go to. They'll set you up just right, and they'll give you performance tune-ups and, you know, support for 2-year comprehensive. It's definitely a leader kind of a setup here, and a lot of the big brands are doing that. And Bosch is definitely one of the more like sophisticated e-bike systems out there. They have a bunch of different displays, and in this case you're getting the Kiox, the integrated battery. This is all state-of-the-art technology that looks really nice, but they do have a PowerTube 625, so you're getting kind of the lower capacity battery. And my theory is that they didn't have room on this frame with that flat foot design to use the higher capacity battery. You are still paying a premium for this bike, $32.99 US. It's expensive, but you're getting all the support and a really nice looking e-bike. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this battery back and then complain about it a little bit more. So you just step it in right there at the bottom. Okay, line it up, and you think you'd just be able to crunch and like click it back in, but that is not the case. Even if you push down this lever, it just kind of hits that bar right there, and maybe that means it's very sturdy, gonna rattle. People aren't gonna be able to steal it as easily, but it does require kind of 2 hands. You got to come back here and twist, and then push in. Let's see if I can get this. No, not quite. See if I can line it up. There we go. Okay, got it most of the way, and then I had to push a little bit extra. It's kind of tough to film this and put the battery back. And, you know, for someone who is maybe looking for a really relaxing cruiser type of bike like this, it's kind of an interesting situation, because you're still gonna have to come over to the other side of the bike and lean down low to plug it in, and you're gonna have to finagle with that battery a little bit. I personally would leave the battery on, but I would be careful, because the extreme heat and extreme cold can kind of mess up the battery a little bit. The extreme heat actually damages the cells over time. Extreme cold is just gonna limit your range temporarily. So if you're parking this bike somewhere like a really hot shed, keep that in mind. Maybe bring the battery somewhere where it's cool and dry, and that way it'll extend the lifetime of the battery. And even though it has this custom plate out here, I think you can remove the battery from the plate to replace it sometime down the road. You know, Bosch has really good ongoing customer support that way. But let's say you get 2 of these bikes. You have like a his and hers, or maybe you get the Path and the Veil, and one is blue and one is, you know, brown. Well, then the battery packs, if one person's gonna take both packs for a really long ride or something, they're not gonna match. Which is a minor thing, but that's one of the trade-offs of the RIB battery design compared to something where it's just a black shield, like maybe under the bike. That's what I've seen with some of the Bowles products and, you know, some of the other e-bike systems out there. So I want to kind of comment on that. Also, look where the bottle cage bosses are. they're like pretty low. If you're stepping over the frame, you're gonna kick right into that. I'm wondering why they didn't put them up higher, right? That would have been a little bit safer, in my opinion. They could have put them here too, but again, this is the area where you're stepping onto the frame. So I just don't quite understand that design choice. It feels like they went for aesthetics a lot on this bike, but some of the actual choices, the utility aspect is compromised a bit. I do want to comment, they've got that nice clear plastic slap guard. As far as the gears and stuff, the shifter is a Serra. It's another compromise for me. We have a one-way trigger for high, right? You can't push it. You have to use your pointer finger, and then 3-step for low. So at least you got the 3-step, but I like that on the Path, they actually have the 2-way trigger. It's a minor thing, but for someone who looks at bikes a lot, it does matter to me. It's just another little compromise that they made. And the way that the light mounts, by the way, points where you steer, which is really nice. And they kept it a little bit lower so that this area would be clean. You probably could get it's like the Bosch smartphone hub connect thing that you can put your mobile phone in, and that's what they did for the Path. On this one, they just went with the Kiox, which is a nice little removable color LCD display. It actually has a micro USB port on the bottom that you can charge from, so 5-volt, 1 amp power output. You could mount your phone somewhere up here. Again, not super crowded, so you actually have room to do that. I like this display. Being able to remove it and take it with you means that you can kind of secure the bike. No one can tamper with it, and it's not going to get beat up as much at bike racks or with the weather. But this is Gorilla Glass, and originally Bosch was marketing this like it's a good display for mountain bikes because it'll just pop off, it won't break, and then the display is super hard. So interesting to see it on a bike like this. I think that also adds to the price. You can permanently or more permanently secure it with like a little set screw down here, but in this case they did not. So there's the mounting point right there. So it's on the bike. I'm actually going to turn the bike around so you'll get some nice exposure on that display. So to turn this thing on, there are 2 buttons right here, a dedicated light button and a power button. I'm gonna just press the power button for a second. It comes on, and it does have like a light sensor, so it goes a little bit brighter when you're in really harsh, strong daylight like we are today. I can read this pretty well. It is a little bit small when you're way up here, but they used color on a lot of these charts, so you could just kind of get a general sense for what level of assist you're in just from your peripheral vision. You don't have to like squint and read everything. So plus, minus, left, right, select, and there is walk mode on top, and walk mode only works if you're in one of those 4 levels of assist. So keep that in mind. If you get a flat tire or something and you feel like, oh, this bike, you know, it's almost 54 pounds, I gotta push it, or you're loaded up with gear and you're in a park where you don't want to ride, it's just too slow, too crowded, walk mode, they've enabled that. That was something Trek did not do in the past. Interestingly, the lights seem to be permanently set on for the Vale. At least this e-bike here, I'm borrowing this from Trek bikes in Coquitlam, so maybe that's something they did, and they can update the software and stuff, but I just wanted to point that out. Maybe it's part of the Trek safety campaign where they're sort of like high contrast, visibility, you know, stay alert. It's a safety thing, so I want to point that out. The main display I use a lot because I just want to get up and go. I'm not really interested in using the display. I want to ride my bike. So the readouts are sort of a clock, assist name. Right now it says off, but if I click the plus button, we go up to Eco, that's the first level, and then Tour, Sport, and Turbo. So to get the 50 Newton meters of torque, you need to be in Turbo, and that gives you like 270% feedback, versus if we were on the Path, which has the Performance Line motor, it would give you 300% and up to 65 Newton meters of torque. Battery percentage, love that. That's really nice. And the Path also has a battery percentage readout on that sort of smartphone Kobe Connect interface. And then you can see it became red. If we arrow down a little bit, it's sort of a blue. And oops, I clicked left. And then Tour is blue and Eco is green. So that's the color stuff I was talking about. Now, if I navigate through the different displays, there are a whole bunch of readouts here. We go to the right, you can see clock and range is dynamic. As I change assist level, which again is listed at the top, it dynamically adjusts. Gives me an approximation. It says, okay, in Turbo you can get about 46 kilometers. If we take it all the way down to Eco, 122. So there's a really big difference, and it's nice to be able to use that in conjunction with the battery percentage to plan your rides. Trip distance, trip time, power in watts and cadence RPM. They both say 0 right now. So you could use a heart rate monitor, and it's actually going to tell you how much power you're exerting as you ride, as well as your heart rate, which is really cool for people who are into fitness, trying to stay in shape and stuff. And yes, you're riding an e-bike, but it's not really cheating if you're getting your heart rate up and you're getting outside. I mean, this is a way to ease into it if you're someone like me with a sensitive knee, or maybe you just got a longer ride and it's too much to do every day without a little bit of help. So very efficient, very cool. If we go to the right, we've got average speed, max speed, 32 kilometers per hour, and that's because I haven't bombed any hills, and really it's hard to get these bikes going beyond that if you're just using human power without a little bit of extra wind or a hill. And then we've got like a quad layout here, so it says distance, range, watts, beats per minute, and then heart rate, a dedicated heart rate screen, calories burned, total distance, and then this final screen right here, this is really cool. Gives you settings, it shows Bluetooth, you can sync your phone, and there is it's like a Bosch Connect app that's pretty cool. You can set your phone up to track your rides, and you can also adjust some of the settings in here. It's not something that you use while you're riding as much as just like set it up and it tracks your rides, or you can do some software updates. So nice to see that. I'm definitely a fan of this display. It's one of my favorites. The button pad takes a little bit more, it's clicky, but the buttons don't move quite as much. It feels very durable, but there's just a little bit more going on with this display compared with like the Purion. It's a small one that mounts here with grayscale, or the older Intuvia. I really like the Intuvia. It was removable, it had a charging port. It was a lot simpler for someone who might need that larger screen. I think some Trek dealers can kind of swap displays out for you. You have to pay a little bit of money, but it could be worth it. Yeah, I hope that gives you some insights into this bike. When I first saw it and I saw the path, I was just trying to figure things out, right? Like, what's the difference? Which bike would really suit my needs? And I'm attracted to the design on this bike, but I definitely like the performance line motor, and it might be worth that $400 for me to upgrade it. It felt very comfortable, and there's a good tire pressure range on these bikes. So even if you didn't have that seat post suspension, that saddle and everything was just a really nice setup. Okay, I think that's good. Just take another little look at this beautiful park here and shove off. So I'm gonna go to my favorite display right here. I'm just gonna go down to, let's see, I accidentally keep hitting all these buttons. You gotta get used to it. Go down to Eco. Okay, this is the lowest level of assist. Fairly instantaneous in terms of starting and stopping, and the display is pretty cool. It actually shows kind of how much power you're exerting versus how much power the system is exerting. So it's another really cool visual feedback point in addition to power. Let's see, I'm gonna climb this hill here. So there we go. So right now I'm exerting 124 watts. Now I'm pushing a little bit harder. I'm exerting even more, and that's kind of fun to watch. See, right now I'm barely pedaling at all, and since this motor system is so smart, it's measuring the pedal cadence, the speed, and pedal torque, it just eases on ever so slightly if you don't push hard. I'm going to take it all the way up to sport to try to, or I'm sorry, turbo, to try to demonstrate that. Right, seems about the same as when I was in Eco, but now I'm going to push harder. Yeah, it actually sounds kind of similar because the motor's so quiet, but I definitely got a lot more boost that way. And I heard it kind of cut out for a second. It was like, because I think I was hitting that 105 maximum RPM support level. So that's the thing. This is just not a super sporty motor, even though this is the Active Line Plus. That's really the lowest I would want to go personally with the Bosch motor systems, because it's not as satisfying to me. The standard Active Line, it hardly feels like you have a motor. You're paying extra money, you're getting weight on the bike. So I'm glad they chose the Plus. But for the bike that seems a little bit, you know, sturdier built with the through axles, I'm just like, why didn't they go with the Performance Line motor? So here we go. There we go. Let's try to get up to 120 RPM. We're gonna max out at, well, there's 105, so we passed the motor support level, and that's where it kind of tapered off, like I was saying. 120 is is kind of my test point for a lot of these different e-bike systems when I'm doing reviews and stuff. Okay guys, from here you're looking at a 40-tooth steel chainring. It's not narrow wide or anything, just standard. We've got that outer plate, which is a guard that protects it from rock strikes and stuff, and also just keeps your pants or dress from touching the chain a bit, right? Like the full chain cover that we see on the path is a little bit more coverage. You know, it gets the job done here, and it's decent. We don't have a full guide, so this could hop off inwards towards the bike, but I haven't experienced that. And I am going to ride like off-road a little bit, so you can listen to the fenders and stuff. I noticed that with the path, the chain actually bangs into the chain cover a little bit more, so it seems to be a louder bike. I like that in both cases you can cycle backwards like this, so you could lube the chain and stuff. Back here we've got that 11 to 36 tooth 9-speed cassette, and then the Alivio derailleur, which is pretty decent. It's like 3 steps up. I think we got Tourney, Altis, Acera, Alivio, and then on the path we'd have Dior, right, with the clutch. So definitely a little bit of a step up there. But this is great for like a cruiser, a 20-mile-per-hour electric bike. Gets the job done. I'm going to cruise along in turbo so you can hear the motor at its loudest, but these are just super quiet motors in my experience. Actually felt pretty good in the grass and very quiet. It's a good setup. You're gonna get a little bit more rattling if you had panniers, and I was surprised that there isn't like I guess just some sort of extra loop or something to secure bags with. And again, you can't put bags on the top of this, so it's just an interesting choice, like an interesting style choice that I think actually is more of a support for the rear fender than just like a utility rack. It doesn't even say the max weight rating on this, and I couldn't find it. The Electra website's a little bit sparse with some of their technical details compared to the Trek website. The motor does climb decently, but again, when I stop pedaling, you kind of get that clunk feeling, like it just feels like it's still pushing for a second. I'm gonna try to demonstrate that. Maybe it's just because it's a brand new bike, but I've experienced that on this motor, the Active Line Plus, as well as the 2020 Performance Line motor, because I think they're similar hardware. Okay, one-handed braking, front brake, working pretty well. They usually put the bigger rotor there because that is where your weight shifts when you're stopping. Nice. Display's looking really great in the shadows here. Feeling very stable. Got the shift detection working pretty well for us. Don't have to worry so much about backing off, although I would still recommend it to try to protect that drivetrain. That steel chainring, it doesn't have narrow wide teeth, but the guide should keep your chain from jumping off. And again, this is sort of a cruiser bike, so probably not going to be too aggressive. Well, thanks for joining me on that little adventure around Coquitlam. I hope I've answered all your questions. I spent a couple days looking at these bikes, just diving in because I like the Electra brand, and I wanted to understand the new models. Like, what do they really mean? I welcome your feedback, your questions, your comments, or observations, because you know, I don't own this bike. I've only got limited time in the saddle. It's always fun to hear what you guys think. I've got a really cool comparison tool back at the website, ElectricBikeReview.com, that allows you to look at all the stats back to back between this bike and some of the other Electra or Trek models. Go ahead and check that out. Maybe sound off in the forums. I love you guys. Ride safe. We'll see you next time.